Good afternoon, councillors, staff and members of the community joining us here in the chambers and online. Can I please ask everyone to take their seats and make sure your phones are on silent, and please stop talking. Welcome to the Public Forum for Monday the 15th of December 2025. Public Forum is an important opportunity for members of our community to speak directly to Council about agenda matters listed for tomorrow's ordinary meeting of Council, which will commence at 9 a.m. I'd like to remind everyone that today's forum is being live streamed. Your attendance here today is taken as consent for your image and voice to be recorded and broadcast publicly. A recording of this forum will remain available on Council's website for at least 12 months. In the chambers today, we have Councillor Alexandra Wyatt, Councillor Ben Pakes, Deputy Mayor Annette Lawrence, Councillor Julie Coburn, Councillor Dean Saul, Councillor Noel Selby, and joining us online, we have Councillor Arthur Bain and Councillor Adam Matchett. From Council staff, we're joined by Mr. Andrew Meadow, our Chief Executive, Mr. Daniel Thorogood, Director of Corporate and Commercial, Mr. Wesley Trotter, Director of Utilities, Mr. Stephen Beasley, Acting Director, Operations and Planning, Ms. Vicky Thomas, Group Manager of Governance and Information Services, and Mrs. Talia Webster, Governance Advisor. We have no apologies for today's public forum. Before we begin, Kempsey Shire Council acknowledges the land of the Dunghutti Nation. We pay respects to elders past, present, and to emerging leaders who continue to guide us into the future. We also acknowledge the stolen generations and the ongoing need to create inclusive and culturally safe spaces for all. This land always was and always will be Dunghutti land. As we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that the public forum is a respectful space. Speakers are encouraged to share their views openly, and we ask that everyone listens with courtesy and consideration. And I also ask that if you are in the gallery and people are speaking, that you remain quiet. Council values hearing from our community, and while opinions may differ, respect for one another allows us to have meaningful discussions that strengthen our Shire. I'll now call for any conflicts of interest from councillors in regards to matters on the agenda. Councillor Pakes.
Just a precautionary declaration. One of the speakers today, Carlos Peters, I've known him, I've lived in the area all the time. I've known him since high school and maybe since we were 12 years old. No real discussion too much about today, but yeah, just declaring that I know one of the speakers, and yeah, not sure the context of what they're speaking about today.
Thank you, Councillor Pakes. Are there any other conflicts, councillors? I hear none. I'll now invite our Chief Executive, Mr. Andrew Meadow, to outline the guidelines for today's public forum.
Thank you. Public forums are to be chaired by the Mayor or their nominee. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes to address the Council. This time is to be strictly enforced by the Chairperson. Speakers at public forums must not digress from the item on the agenda of the Council meeting they have applied to address the Council on. If a speaker digresses to irrelevant matters, the Chairperson is to direct the speaker not to do so. If a speaker fails to observe a direction from the Chairperson, the speaker will not be further heard. A councillor, including the Chairperson, may, through the Chairperson, ask questions of a speaker following their address at a public forum. Questions put to a speaker must be direct, succinct, and without argument. Speakers are under no obligation to answer a question put under clause 4.15. Answers by the speaker to each question are to be limited to 1 minute. Speakers at public forums cannot ask questions of the Council, councillors, or Council staff. When addressing the Council, speakers at public forums must comply with this code and all other relevant Council codes, policies, and procedures. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the Council's Code of Conduct, or making other potentially defamatory statements. If the Chairperson considers that a speaker at a public forum has engaged in the conduct of the type referred to in the previous clause, the Chairperson may request that person to refrain from the inappropriate behaviour and to withdraw and unreservedly apologise for any inappropriate comments. Where the speaker fails to comply with the Chairperson's request, the chairperson may immediately require the person to stop speaking. The previous clause does not limit the ability of the chairperson to deal with disorderly conduct by speakers at public forums in accordance with the relevant provisions of this code. Where a speaker engages in the conduct of the type referred to previously, the general manager or their delegate may refuse further applications from that person to speak at public forums for such a period as the general manager or their delegate considers appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Medal. Before we move to our speakers, I just wanted to make a small mention of what happened down at Bondi Beach yesterday. You might have noticed walking in to council today, up to the chambers, that our flags are at half-mast, and they are all over the country. Yesterday was truly disturbing, distressing, and awful. And listening to what's been said to speakers, my heart goes out to all the families and all the people that have been affected. That type of violence, that type of hatred has no place in our country. And if you haven't seen, and I'm not sure many of us will be home in time, but the Prime Minister has invited people to light a candle at 6:47 p.m. tonight in their window. So a reminder for people to maybe participate in that one. But again, a really disturbing turn of events, and I just encourage everyone to take care of one another following this. We'll now move on to our speakers. Thank you to everyone who's taken time to register and speak with us today. Your contributions help inform Council's decisions and ensure that community voices are part of our conversation. We have 3 speakers today, and I'll now invite our first speaker, Mr. Lindsay Kay, to address the forum. He'll be speaking against 10.3 Code of Meeting Practice. When you're ready, Mr. Kay.
Councillors, citizens, I have to speak against the item in the business papers 10.3 in regard to the Code of Conduct. I do acknowledge that there are constraints that are dictated by the Minister, but this is change wanted by the community, and councillors are the community's representatives, and they've been clearly expressed for a long time. We need to be able to have members of the public ask questions at public forums. The council are under no obligation to answer those questions. They can take the questions on notice, but why not answer the questions that the public have at a public forum? Especially if it's easy to answer them on the day and allay someone's fears, move something along for that person. Why aren't people allowed to show up on the day and be allowed to speak? I actually have a bet with someone that they won't be able to speak at the February meeting because they won't be able to negotiate the torturous means of being able to speak at this forum. I put my money where my mouth is, and I'm confident that I will get their money because it is very hard. In fact, I think very few people succeed on their first attempt. They should also be able to talk about items that are in the business papers, but also about any matter of importance to the ratepayer. Just because a matter isn't in the business papers doesn't mean that there isn't someone out in the community that has a very strong opinion about something that is current in their lives that they would like to express an opinion about. Why should we have a limit on the number of speakers for and against, especially when that can be easily waived by a determination of the CEO? Let's not put a limit on it. If there are 15 people who want to speak, let 15 people speak. We have already expended the resources by having all of you people come together, all of the council staff come together. Why not get full value for our money if there is a need in the community for it? The CEO has an absolute right of refusal, and I myself have been refused in the past. Now, they have to give a written reason, but their latitude in coming up with a written reason is pretty extensive. They say that you should never give someone tyrannical powers, or if you do, never elect a tyrant. Well, we don't elect a CEO. The time limits, it's a strict 5 minutes. It used to be that there could be time added with the agreement of the meeting. This seems to be worthwhile, because now if the councillors, if you good councillors want to hear more from a speaker, you have to come up with Dorothy Dix questions. And really, that's realistically just a sham and a farce when you could have just voted to let them speak for more time. It's important to the community that we come together with the elected council when we're discussing issues, and that we are also informing the executive leadership team. Why are we kicking this down the road? This was first raised as a notice of motion with the previous council, and it was determined that there was insufficient time available for it to go out on public exhibition and whatnot, and by then it would be past the elections and it'll be the next council. And when the next council came around, it was determined that, oh, hang on, there's a draft code of conduct coming out. We can't have anything done until we've addressed the draft code of conduct. Well, despite what the minister says, we are still local government as a local council. You have been elected by the local ratepayers. If they want a particular thing done in a particular way that is particular to a particular council, then that should be all well and good. And if that means that you as a council have to vote no and then talk to the minister about why you can't go ahead with the constraints that he has put, or he or she has put on the code of conduct for this shire, then so be it. That's the way it has to be. And I haven't even gotten around to addressing the main code of conduct. There's stuff in there that's just absolutely absurd. You can't bring a flag or a sign into a meeting. I mean, that's just, come on, guys, let's get a bit serious about this whole thing. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Just a point of clarity, it's the Code of Meeting Practice, not the Code of Conduct. That's item 10.3 for anybody who was listening, just a little.
This is 10.3 I'm talking.
Yeah, which is the Code of Meeting Practice, not the Code of Conduct.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Big pardon.
Yeah. Is there any questions for Mr. Kay? Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you, and thank you for your advocacy. Just confirming that you have spoken on this before, around the questions from the floor, more speakers and non-agenda items. So apart from those forums, which you've done many times, have you actually provided written comments or feedback into council?
No, I stopped doing written comment to the council after I got a scathing reply to the corridor bypass plan. Mm-hmm. I figured, seeing as I'd spent literally days on a written proposal that was many pages long, to have it completely ignored and commented on in a way which I actually found offensive. I'm happy to come and speak at these meetings and answer questions, but I'm not going to expend that level of effort in a written submission that just gets buried. Speak.
Thank you for that. So my follow-up question was, you consider this a platform where you have provided your feedback to council several times on the code of conduct? Yes, or do you?
I would find it hard to imagine a reality in which that wasn't the case. I would feel that if what I have said previously hasn't been taken into account and has been conveniently dropped down the memory hole, then why am I, okay, I've decided personally, which is my decision, that written submissions aren't doing me any good. If it turns out coming and speaking at the public forum isn't doing me any good, well, I think what's the point in engaging at all with local government? It's not getting me anywhere.
Are there any other questions, councillors? I hear none. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Kay.
Thank you.
We now have Mr. Paul Haler, who is speaking against item 11.2, notice of motion, declaration of climate emergency. Mr. Haler, when you're ready.
Just keeps it going. Okay. Okay, 2 bills, I'm out. Okay, we ready to rock and roll? Yep. Okay, this is a presentation dealing with our council. This valley, not outside of it, not the rest of Australia, our council. I'd like to start or begin this with quoting statements from CEO Medal. I won't use voice impersonations, and Director Thorogood from the November council meeting. Mr. Medal, quote, "There needs to be a step change in what we are doing to be where we need to be. We need to shift the dial to where this community need to be financially," unquote. Director Thorogood, quote, "We are borrowing money to maintain cash flow. Unless we have an increase in revenue and a decrease in costs, we're in a financially unsustainable position moving forward," end quote. The short to medium term costs to implement this climate emergency action declaration, which hasn't been costed, is a gamble with our rates, which are already feeling the looming SRV increases without having this declaration. But what about the climate emergency in this valley? Up on the screen there is the average temperature, mean average temperature since about 1900 to present, showing a trend line moving downward, not upward, a cooling. This graph here is a bit of a throwaway, but it's the last 20 years because I'm appreciative of the fact that we've got some young people viewing this, or that sort of see the last 20 years as being pretty significant. What it is the hottest recorded temperature by month from 2001 to 2025. What this is trying to demonstrate, the years are on top of the bars, the months are at the bottom. What it's trying to show is that there's no trend at all in any warmth or any heat. I mean, the hottest December day we've had to date was in 2004. It's hardly an emergency that we probably won't get to the hottest day this month, which was 40 odd degrees. And I could give you examples of that, but I don't think that's it's just a 20-year one. This one is a little bit more complex, but it's the years across the bottom, and then the lines are blue minor floods, red major floods, orange significant floods. And what you'll see from 1949 is there were some significant floods there, including the 49 and 50 floods, which is that thicker line. Then you got, the medium floods, the smaller floods, another large one, up until about 1980, I think it is. And then all of a sudden, the blue lines and the orange lines start to disappear as we get towards 2025. It's because council didn't need a climate emergency to put in a levy. They had a thing called common sense that stopped the water from coming into Kempsey. So naturally, that graph reflects that. You'll also notice on the next graph that this is the major floods we've had since 1949 to 2025. And in 2025, 2022, we've had some close ones there, which is thicker lines. Back in 1949-50, we had bang, then two close ones, and then about one each decade, or even possibly a little bit more. There's nothing unusual or heading into some sort of a Armageddon of climate catastrophe. This is the trend line for major floods, the red one, hardly going up at a right angle, just reasonably flat. Jesus, that 1 minute to go. Annual rainfall, that's annual rainfall, showing basically the same thing. What about the poor people in Kempsey? What about the mental health issues to do with the poor people in Kempsey? How much can they stand with the dramatic announcement of a declaration of climate emergency? Just a few mentally exhausting hurdles now being experienced. The SRV shock, energy price shock, Christmas tree shock, crime shock, recovery from this year's flood shock, shrinking CBD and business closures. Next is iconic JB hairstyles in Smith Street. And current council evidence their concerns that they are concerned and they do follow a climate policy, such as flood mitigation policy, council employee work practices, a flood levy that, gee, they could do in 1970. Common sense. That was the I'll run out of time.
You have Mr. Haler. Thank you for your presentation. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Wyatt.
I have a few, if I may. Firstly, I do consider myself a scientist, but even my own kid thinks I lack common sense.
Sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, yeah, I do consider my a scientist, but even my own kid thinks I lack common sense.
Sorry, I'm going to have a question. I don't want to let you.
Order, please.
Can you explain that data? Because it just looks like lines on a page to me. Can you explain the source and that? Can you just explain that again? Because I don't understand.
Absolutely. It's from the Bureau of Meteorology. It's sourced independently. And I'm not here to accept. If you want to have a look at the graphs, I'm quite happy to supply them for $500. No, you can get that on the Never.
I have a follow-up question. This is not in relation to the notice of motion. Did you either attend or listen or read the meeting minutes of the October 25 meeting?
Yeah.
Are you aware that the reference to the declared climate change emergency was deliberately moved from that notice of motion following our debate and at the request of the Mayor, and that the November this business paper does not reflect the actual recommendation that will be before Council tomorrow?
Yeah, I've read all that.
So the answer is that you've read. Okay. Apart from the strategic document, which will be grant funded and not paid for by ratepayers, what, in your view, is the actual cost to ratepayers of including natural disaster mitigation and adaptation measures which is just a criterion for our decision making? What's the actual cost, do you think?
That's a rhetorical question.
Okay. And given that the intent of the notice of motion is about a criteria of how we make decisions, can you identify any financial impact of that?
Of course I can. There'll be layers of administration go into that. You're asking for a report by 2028. You don't do that just clicking your fingers. There's people who have actually got to do that, and time is money. Council have got to pay for it. And not only that, I'm only interested in this council. I'm not interested in the effects of a federal or state government. Things are already legislated. They've got to follow procedures. Are you not trusting your council that they are capable of carrying out directions from state and federal governments on this issue? Are you trying to put something in there to say, not only don't I trust you, but I want to put something in there to make sure that you do the right thing? Question.
Is that a question? Are you asking, is that a question to me?
He's not able to ask you questions.
Yes.
Benny? No case I'm not able to. I'm not going to fall in your trap. Yes, it is. Sorry, I'll take all that back. Next question.
Are there any other questions, councillors, for Mr. Haler? Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Mr. Haler. Mr. Haler, I noticed you've done a lot of climate research on our council area. Has there been any other information you found from other sources in regard to this notice of motion?
Yes, there is, and it's very hard to find Indigenous records because they lived with the land. They didn't need somebody to, tell them how to live or, what sort of buildings or whatever they should have. So I remember I read a book a few years ago, and it was called People of the River, and I quote, "The largest axe grinding site in the region," this is the Nepean Hawkesbury, "at Black Falls, where the river narrows dramatically and separates into two channels as it flows through the small sandstone gorge of the Castle Neck. On the sandstone rocks outcropping along the bank, just below the shallows, there are hundreds of axe grinding grooves, some of them the largest and deepest I've ever seen. They are found everywhere. This is by the largest number of axing grooves I've ever seen placed. Although it was a drought year, Tal saw grooves well below the waterline. Apparently, he wrote late, the Aborigines even drier periods than the present one. They did between 1150 and 1500 AD.
Second question, Madam Mayor, if I may, and your indulgence, please. You mentioned in discussions in this chamber that council's already doing things on climate change and climate adaptation. Can you provide any extra evidence of this, please?
Yeah, another hobby horse I'm on, which is renewables. I accidentally discovered this while looking in the state archives for what they're doing about the 12-acre renewable battery farm over here that'll feed off Alvin Mountain. And I noticed that the council had to have passed comment on it, and Marnie Jeffrey, Development Services Manager, Operations and Planning from Kempsey Council, wrote a letter on behalf of the council to Sears, and it read, in part, biodiversity include that the provisions of the Kempsey Council's comprehensive koala plan of management must be considered in the assessment of the biodiversity values and likely biodiversity impacts from the development. Emissions, create an emissions section with the key issues addressing the following: a detailed description of emissions reduction methods, all stages of the project, an exploration of how the project will store excess renewable power from the network,
Sorry,
as
Mr.
opposed to coal and
Mr.
generated
Haylor, you
black power.
only have a minute to answer the question. Sorry, and the
So-
time's up. Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Saul. Are there, Councillor Selby?
Yeah, Mr. Haylor, your graphs you had up there, I noticed you said you got them from BOM, Eurometeorology, yet you had on there Gonzo News, a fictitious character. Can you answer that question?
God's own news, did I? That was probably I was talking about myself or something, wasn't it? God's own news.
Is that a real question?
Apart from, yeah, okay. I'll just try and find this graph you're referring to.
It was superimposed over them.
God's own news.
Yeah, that's what I
I
said.
thought you said God's own news.
Yeah.
But then again, you got, yeah. So
A fictitious character, you're telling us.
is that, are you questioning, what question would you like?
Well, an answer on that. Is he a fictitious character?
It's got nothing to do with I'm providing.
All right. I'm going to put a stop to that. Are there any other questions? Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Haylor.
Thank you.
I'll now invite Mr. Carlos Peters, who is speaking against 11.2 Notice of Motion Declaration of Climate Emergency.
All good, thank you.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Peters.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I'd like to start by acknowledging Council is the largest business in Kempsey, I believe. It currently has a debt circa 70 million. And I believe councillors are like board members of a private company and require that mindset. And ratepayers are no different to shareholders. And if the board of a company asks its shareholders to sign a blank cheque without any rough estimates on cost, any feasibility whilst already in debt, and now struggling to balance the books, there would be an uproar. I fail to see how this matter is any different. In the recommendation, the first point asks that Council acknowledge climate change is contributing to more frequent and severe weather events. Where is the evidence of this? History shows we've always had bushfires, floods, etc. And for over 70 years, we haven't seen the likes of the 49 flood or the floods in the late 1800s. Why do we now need to acknowledge they are now more severe than when that simply isn't the case? As I previously mentioned, you, the councillors, are our representatives. And I ask, do you really believe the majority of our Shire think about climate change that way? If you look at our state and federal elections, the answer is quite clear where the majority of our ratepayers sit on this issue. I'm trying not to be political, but it's out there and it's fact. And you're asking them to acknowledge something through you which they don't agree with. Number 2 talks of long-term sustainability and financial capacity. Should this motion go ahead, you'll see the opposite. As mentioned before, this hasn't been costed, doesn't take into consideration the negative impact it will have on investment and development for the area. Paris Agreement, this is likely to change, currently a hot topic in federal and state governments, not part of Council's wheelhouse from what I can see, and I don't know why we would even be talking about it as local government. Major emitters around the world aren't meeting targets, even though they are signed up, and there is no penalty. You're wanting to financially penalise the ratepayers of the Kempsey Shire, whilst the percentage of change they can make is minuscule to the perceived issue. 4A, where it talks about integration, it's already been integrated with most of the council plans, of which you all supported 6 months ago. Why wasn't this brought up then? Are you wanting to go back and start from scratch? Or will everything in this declaration have the power to trump what is already in place? More green tape equals less development and investment into our area. 4B, who is going to develop the framework? Current employees? Will a new role be created for this? If so, what does that cost? C, supporting open communication. If open communication had happened within the Shire prior to this, we wouldn't be here now discussing it. The people I've spoken to, it has been a resounding no to the motion, with only 10% approximately for it. This is not something the Shire supports. Working collaboratively. D, this should already be the case. However, the second part, which talks of accelerating climate action, provides no detail on what that actually means, how it looks, or what it'll cost. E, pursuing carbon neutral by 2050. How is this even possible when we're building roads, using tractors, trucks, everything else? Where in the details showing what measures would be introduced? I don't believe it's possible at all. In summary, the recommendation in motion fails on many levels. It doesn't state how it will make any measurable change. It doesn't state who will be making the change or how many people will be required to do so. Are we increasing the workload of current staff, or are we adding new staff? None of it provides any costing. There is no feasibility to show what difference is possible at what cost. The background makes mention to fires, floods, storms and droughts. History shows us this has been going on long before we were ever here. I have a graph showing that the number and severity of tropical cyclones in Australia is now much lower than it was back in the 70s. This is not some far-right claim. It can be found on the BOM website. Importantly, it mentions rateable income in the background and tries to assert that should we not support the motion, we will see depressed property values and a drop in rateable value. I believe the complete opposite is the case. I deal with investors and developers every day of my life and have done so for 30 years. Extra green tape will stifle investment, lead to higher costs and turn us into a poverty town. I've seen Alex's standard response to the email sent out not supporting the motion, and note she mentions how many of the required actions are already taking place, as we already covered previously in 4A. So I ask again, if this is the case, why do we need the motion and the declaration? Who are we trying to appease? None of this will have any effect on insurance. They are a law unto themselves. I also note council are moving to an all-electrical vehicle fleet. As a ratepayer, I'm appalled and frustrated that this has flown under the radar as well. We could spend lots of time back and forth on the science behind that, but that's for another day, and my objectives will probably fall upon deaf ears. The ratepayers of Kempsey Shire aren't prepared to write you a blank cheque to satisfy an ideology without more detail on who it will affect, how it will affect them, how much it will cost them, how long it will continue to cost them, and when many of the protections you are asking for are already provided for in the current plans. This doesn't pass the pub test, vote it out.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Very well timed, really. Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Peters. Gee, what a presentation. It takes a lot of nerve and well
Thank
done.
you.
Mr. Carlos, you are in the community. You're numerous sporting items and businesses and you know people. You're saying today that the community is very much against this.
Yes.
And we have councils have received 18 emails for the people at home to be aware of, saying that we do not want this. Should council do take up this or another form tomorrow, what do you think the backlash will be, Mr.
I think that there will be an uproar. As we've noted, the costings aren't there, and they're already feeling the rate rise hurting them. I've had many landlords sell their investment properties already, and I have several investors ring me, and when they say, what are the rates in Kempsey, and I tell them, and they say, oh, sorry, that's too high, we're not interested in that area anymore. If this goes on top of that, we're already going to have the second part of the rate rise come in, and if there's more green tape, where do we go? But the community itself will then suffer, because without the investment, without the developers, we stay where we are. We already know that we can't balance the books. We need that development. We need that investment.
Thank you. A follow-up question, if I may, please, Madam Mayor. Mr. Carlos, you are in property management. If this were to happen and we had less rentals, how would that affect not your business, but also the community?
There would certainly be less rentals available, as we've witnessed since the initial rate rise. We've had approximately 5 to 6% of our investors up and sell their properties based on that. The returns simply aren't there. We've had higher interest rates, which has nothing to do with local council, but we've had a perfect storm. We've had higher rates, higher interest rates. The returns aren't there. We're not talking the rents that you get in Sydney or Port Macquarie. The rents are lower. And when the return is not there, they're found wanting, those properties have been sold. And they are no longer there available for those people seeking a home that can't afford to buy one.
Thank you.
Councillor Pakes.
Carlos, thanks for taking the time. Not a lot of people in the community take the time to come and address at public meetings. Just a depth on your knowledge of this area. Now, I've known you a long time, but not a lot of people in this room might know how you got some knowledge of this. And you've been in this room probably many times before today. But just a question on how you have probably an extended knowledge of this and why you have that extended knowledge of this beyond probably where you started your career.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. As you said, I did spend plenty of time, certainly downstairs here as a kid, with my father being here. With that, plenty of things get spoken around with in confidence around the dinner table, and so I've grown up knowing what goes on. And being local and having a keen interest, a lot of the staff here will tell you my intricate knowledge on the floods. And you know, generally, me and a couple of the guys here can get much closer than the bomb do in predicting where it's going to go. I've read the full mitigation plan. I've seen all those things. So as I said in my presentation, here we are talking about floods in this. Well, it's breached the levee twice. In real terms, to be a proper flood in the CBD since 49, it's been 2001 and this year. I don't see the emergency.
And probably not directly on your follow up there, not directly on your presentation, but there was a note on the previous speakers as a flood in the late 80s. I don't actually recall a major flood in the late 80s. I don't remember that one. Do you remember a flood in the late 80s? You would have been looking at my house.
Yes, mate.
Down the flat at Glenrock.
Yeah, I do. I do remember it in the 80s, and we canoed up and down second lane as kids as a bit of fun. So I do recall in the 80s that there were a couple. On that, and try not to digress, but if you talk to the old people and you wonder what records were lost in other floods and everything else, but if you talk to the old people, I believe when you look at 1893 on the numbers, it's exactly the same as another flood, and I think it's been transposed. The old people will tell you about 1893 coming up and over the railway line. We haven't seen that in our lifetime. So it's come up into where the railway hotel sits now.
So follow up again. So climate change isn't the biggest topic in the Macleay Valley. What is the biggest topic then? What is the biggest topic that people talk about in business when they come to your situation? Cost of living.
Cost of living. But being my business, the next biggest topic is I'm talking to developers, and they're talking about things that you already know about that you're trying to fix. And I know that it's something you've inherited and you're doing your best to fix that. But it's time of DAs. It's cost of DAs. It's multiple hurdles when if they were given those hurdles at the beginning, they could have jumped through all of them and fixed it and done it much more timely and more efficiently. But that's the cost of living and other issues that council need to be focusing on rather than this to fix to keep the money in our area.
Last one. So obviously you've recognised in the business paper the development control plans going at the public exhibition. Do you see that as a higher priority than the climate change notion?
Much, and I noticed that there's lots of the climate change stuff already in there. It's already there, as I mentioned. So why are we now doing this over the top of it? We have the opportunity to put that into that control plan. Why do we need this, which is not cost? It doesn't state what it is. It's an open book to say, well, we'll do as we please.
Councillor Wyatt.
So just similar questions to previous. Did you read the minutes of the October 25 meeting, or did you sort of listen to any of the debate in that meeting, the October 25
I haven't listened to it, and I haven't read it thoroughly. I saw it come up at that time, and was hoping that it would be adjourned because I thought that this was terrible for the area. It was. I've then had more chance because it was sprung on me within, you know, I didn't have time to then come to the previous. Then when I've seen it come up, as I say, I'm born and bred here, lived here my whole life. Never have I felt the need to come and address council like I am today. This is my first, I've spent plenty of time here, but I've never done this. I see that this is an important enough decision that it warranted my time and effort to come here and present.
And I totally commend you on that. And your presentation was very articulate and very well thought out. And if you have that printed, I'd like to see it. But my second question is, so if you had that meeting, are you aware that the reference to the declared climate change emergency was deliberately removed from that notice of motion following debate in the meeting and at the request from the mayor, which I understand came from other people in the community, so that what comes to council tomorrow will not be the actual recommendation that's on those papers? So negotiation has already been undertaken, basically. Sorry.
I had a look at the extract and the recommendations were still there, as I believe, and that's what I based it off. I note from your email that the emergency part has been removed, which I think is a good move, but I still don't believe that there's enough detail in the recommendations that somebody could pass that.
My third question is, in your view, what is the actual cost to ratepayers, including natural disaster mitigation adaptation measures designed to protect developers and businesses, and as a consideration of our thought processes, our criteria in making decisions? Where is the cost? What is the cost to ratepayers of a thought process around how we make our decisions?
That is my question also, because it doesn't have it in there. And so I don't believe that you can take something and ask for it to be passed without those costings there, and it lacks the detail. That is my whole point. I'm not against being environmentally friendly. I'm not here to have a political discussion about whether climate change is real or it isn't real. We all believe it's real. It's whether we know that it's man-made or whether it's Mother Nature. And so that's where we would disagree. But the problem that I have with the whole thing is that it's not costed. And so you're asking me what the cost is. I'm asking you what the cost is. None of us know. If I have a developer walk in and there's green tape all over everything, they just go, I'm going to a different shire where it's not there.
Unfortunately, I can't debate you on that, but I would encourage you to listen to the meeting tomorrow. You mentioned the operational documents. So you are aware that it is the operational documents which turn decisions into costings, which do go out to the communities for consultation. So it's not us behind the closed doors making those decisions.
So as anybody, as I said, as a developer, we need to jump through hoops. The thing is that those items are already in those documents and we can see those. My problem with this is, as I say, does it come in and trump those? Where does it, what power does it give? And it doesn't state any of that. It's not clearly defined to say what power it will give council to trump over the top of anything. Will it say that, no, you can't do this, but you can do that? It doesn't show the detail of those things. And that's the vagueness is where I have the problem with it.
And just one final, as I said, I can't debate with you, unfortunately, but you mentioned that it will affect residential properties and not residential, rented properties, and you mentioned that it will have an impact on investment. Specifically, how is that going to impact on a rental property and investment? What's the investment impact?
The investment impact will be we cannot develop at the same rate as what we currently are. And so as I say, these are all ifs, but the problem is that that's what this presents to me. The recommendation fills me with paragraphs of ifs and buts and what is it. Now, if it turns into more green tape, if it does all of those things, we don't have any new properties coming in. You were talking about rateable value. Well, that goes down because we don't have any new investment. As investment walks away from the town, property prices do come down. And as I said, that's why I believe the complete opposite of what you had in the background. If you go ahead with this, you will have the effect that you're saying is of if we don't go ahead with it. And I believe it's the complete opposite.
Where in their notice of motion, those recommendations, does it say that it will have an impact on development and green tape?
It doesn't. That's my belief.
That's your belief?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that the collective we, I don't know about this, whether this is true, but you mentioned that the collective we is not denying a change in climate, whether human-induced or geological time. And I agree with you on that. Like, some people do and don't, and this is not up for the debate here. But do you think that for councils or any developer to incorporate measures that future-proof a business is a good idea?
Yes, but I also believe that we live in a nanny state where we're over-authorised, over-checked, and we're not entitled to make our own decision or take risks of our own accord. So we see things like the PMF that the state are imposing on developments around here. That's a 1 in 500. The PMF is a 1 in 500 year event. Now, why are we as humans not able to make our own decision on whether we're prepared to put ourselves in the line of a 1 in 500 year event? Why is that not the case? Why is that taken away from us? Will it happen? Yes. 1 in 500 years. We might have 2 in year on year, and then it not happen for another 1,000 years. But surely that is a human risk that we are, as competent, smart people, allowed to make that decision ourselves, rather than have somebody else tell us.
Councillor White and Councillor Saul's waiting to ask questions as well.
Yeah, thank you. Some of us are on the same page here, except just coming from total different ends. But our federal government, like it or not, has signed us up to this, and so has our state government, like us or not. Do you think that it's in our financial interest to go along with what those governments said because it better places us in a position to get funding?
I don't believe so. I think that with what's already in the plans shows an intent to do the right thing. It shows that you are being sensible about the environment without going too far. And again, my worry is that with the recommendations there not being clear, is that then a step too far? It doesn't provide the outline of exactly what it is. So I know I keep harping back to the same thing, but unfortunately, that's my answer. So with the other stuff already being there, I think that state and federal government can see that. You can walk to them cap in hand and say, hey, we've put all of this in here. We take it seriously. We can't sign up to the Paris Accord. That's not our job. That's not in our wheelhouse.
Right, I'm going to go to Councillor Saul now.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Peters, with so many emails coming through and so much public comment, do you believe we should have this more, perhaps, community consultation on the issue before a vote is taken?
I think that if you did have, I think that you may be surprised how strongly people would be against it. I think that, as I said, I've never been here in 30 years of adult life, so in 49 years of my life, I've never stood here and presented and haven't felt that strongly about it. There are the amount of people that I've spoken to about it that didn't even know that it was up. They weren't understanding that it was there, didn't know. They said, oh, they're not doing that, are they? That's not council. Why would they be discussing that? It's not a council matter. That has been the resounding response. Oh, why would they discuss that? That's not a council matter.
Thank you.
Councillor Wyatt.
Sorry, I just got lost in our conversation, so you're a bit lost. In the interest of negotiation, where you're representing one side of the debate, and others are representing the other side of the debate, do you think there's any compromise?
I think there's always compromise, but I think that the problem is there can't be compromise on what is there. So there has to be detail. If there is detail that states we need to change these other things that you've passed 6 months ago, and okay, we've done that incorrectly, we should have gone down this route. Yes, happy for you to pick the eyes out of it. As I said, you're already doing the environmental things. Let's state where they may be wrong. But if we're doing this for the sake of doing it to say that we're adopting climate change, well, then I don't see any point in it. And I don't see any negotiation around that. I don't, for the sake of having a document that we ticked a box, I don't see that as being beneficial.
Councillor Pakes.
Mine's probably an historical question in that in your communications with the community and so on, has the core business of council being road infrastructure, sewer and water, has that changed over your period of time in the last 30 years you've been in the Valley? Like, really, has that changed a lot in communities' view and in your experience?
In communities' eyes, no, not at all. As you would have had with the backlash of the rate rises, that you get all the, oh, my road's got potholes, Spooners Avenue is supposed to be a flood-free route, why isn't it tarred? All these things are all the core things that come up. You would only need to look at your complaints register that you would have to see what everyone is complaining about. I could be wrong, but I doubt that there's a single one there that says, oh, gee, I wish council had signed a climate change declaration. I don't believe that that's in the complaints.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Are there any further questions? All right. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Peters.
Thank you.
That was our last speaker. I'd like to thank all of our speakers once again for making representations to council matters on the agenda for tomorrow. I trust that they'll be taken into consideration. I wish everyone a good evening and a safe and happy Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I declare this public forum closed.